Okay, so today is May 14th, 2024, and this is the operator framework working group. Um, I've got the slides shared here so we can just jump right in. I don't see any briefs or RFCs ready to be reviewed. Before I move on from there, does anybody on the call have any design docs that they'd like to add or talk about? Okay, not hearing any. Um, see, do we have any previous action items? It looks like we do not have any previous action items, so that's good. So then next up, jumping right in, Jordan, question about issues in V0 repos.
Yeah, so this is just sort of a thing I've been observing for a while now and trying to figure out if we can clarify expectations in here because we're seeing people continue to write issues against these, but our position is really that we're trying to move general focus from V0 to V1, which means that we have to reduce the amount of time that we're spending on the V0 stuff. And we don't have any of these marked as maintenance or anything like that. So I'm not sure what the process is, what folks would prefer to do. I just would like to set some expectations so that when people are slamming an issue in here, they're not expecting that the team is immediately jumping on it with a short delivery threshold.
Yeah, I think this is a good call out. Um, and it seems like these different repos sort of potentially have different levels of expected maintenance, right? Like the operator lifecycle manager repo, that is pretty much maintenance mode only, bug fixing sorts of things. Um, Operator registry, we're trying to do a little bit related to FBC still, because that's still relevant for OLMV1. RucPack, we're using now as a library, that's going to still be relevant to OLMV1. So in my mind, like I would definitely agree, Jordan, that like an operator lifecycle manager, like maybe it would make sense to have something in the issue template that says, unless this is a critical issue, like we're unlikely to respond. If you have something critical, you might want to also reach out in our upstream Slack channel to see if you can get a hold of somebody, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know what the process is. It feels like from a community perspective, there's still a lot of users on. Yeah, OLM is the best example here for V0 release versions here, but we're really not focusing on doing any features for that. And like you say, and if it's not a critical issue, we're not really focusing on it. So is there a way also, because I think that the image template is a great idea, but is there also a way for us to label the repo more prominently as a maintenance mode?
Yeah, I mean, we can put it in the README at the top and stuff like that.
Okay,
I
so
don't
if I
think there's
just,
a I don't think there's a GitHub official way of doing it. It's either active or it's like archived. But then if it's archived, you can't do
yeah, I
it.
definitely didn't want to do that, but yeah, I'm definitely looking for shades of gray here. And if I can spin a PR to try to surface that a little more prominently, as you say in the README and the issue template. If we feel like that's enough, that's where I'd start is with the OLM repo.
Yeah, I think that works. One thing that comes to mind is that I was sort of somewhat tangentially involved when Helm 2 was transitioning to Helm 3. And granted, for them, like they had Helm 3 in the same repo as Helm 2. But you might, consider going over to that repo and looking at its history when it was doing that migration to see if there's any inspiration to gain from how they sort of handled Helm 2 versus Helm 3 stuff. But yeah, I mean, it seems reasonable to put something in our README and to update the issue template. Anybody else have any thoughts one way or the other?
No, I think I agree with you, Joe. Like, really, that's like the best that we could do is those two things. Cause like, there's no, like you said, it's either active or archived from like a global setting standpoint.
Yeah, another thing that we could consider is like having a bot that actively closes issues that, it's sort of like the stale bot, that we include a message that says, like, sorry, like this project is in maintenance mode and we don't have enough cycles to get to this. And if you think this issue is really important, please reopen it and, ask us in our Slack channel. Like that would be another way to at least clear these out if we thought we needed to do that. All right, so I think I heard an action item here. Jordan, I think I heard you say
Yeah, sign me up, boss.
mm,
I'll do it for OLM.
yeah,
As you say, right, like RuckPack actually shouldn't be in that list because it's a V1 concern, but registry is kind of a V0, V1 concern. My main intent was really to just make sure that we're communicating clearly and that we're still giving attention to pruning these.
Just
I do.
just a question about that bot, Joe. Like, don't all of operator framework repos use the same bot? Cause like that, we were talking about like stale or frozen or whatever, that exists in operator SDK and like all of those other repos, or is each repo using a different bot mechanism for that type of stuff?
I think it's per repo. Because there's some configuration that you have to put somewhere to say, here's what labels to use, here's what message to put, here's what repos to match against if it's coming from, like, I know that we used to use Prow, which has a plugin that does that, but I'm not sure if we're still using that. It might be something that's like a GitHub action. But I don't necessarily consider that to be as important as at least just labeling, right? Like if we get fed up with having a huge number of open issues, and for some reason that's a problem for us, then yeah, maybe we go and make sure that there's a bot doing the thing we want it to do. But at least in terms of communicating to people that are trying to ask for features or open issues, it seems like a good first step is just the things that show up when you go to the landing page or try to open an issue.
Yeah, for sure. My question was more of a tangential one. Like, I agree, those first two things that Jordan are going to take care of will help.
For the other two repos, are we, obviously the numbers are a lot lower, and like 5 and 9 PRs across the board actually is not bad at all. So I think from the PR perspective, that's probably okay. From an issue perspective, 72 and 80 don't actually seem that high. So that doesn't totally really concern me. I guess it'd be interesting to know, like, I think the most interesting thing is, and the thing that we've struggled with as a community is we're primarily focused only on the issues that we ourselves generate and the PRs that we ourselves create, because we're talking to each other and saying, hey, can you look at this? And things move that way. We're not, and we haven't been as good at keeping track of just the upstream issues in general. I don't know if anyone agrees or disagrees with that, or whether we think that's a problem. I think it's probably a bit of a problem only because it leaves people with probably a reasonable impression that we're not quite as open of a community as we'd like to be. And we sort of just do things the way that we want to without really engaging. So I think there's definitely some improvement we could have in the projects that we're actually active in. Yeah, Varsha.
Um, not sure of operator registry, but at least for Ruckpack has gone through a lot of architectural changes since the beginning. So most of the issues which are currently in Ruckpack are kind of not relevant uh, in the current scenario. A lot of them are related to the stuff which we would end up removing or end up not supporting and things like that. So I think we probably eventually need to clean up the issues in Ruckpack, because when we were POCing and developing and making changes, we created issues and left it for follow-ups and never eventually cleaned up with the changes we made, which is fine, but something um, to point that most of the issues could be irrelevant or stale.
Yep. I think I agree that there's definitely some cruft, probably in operator registry too. I'm personally, like, I'm not all that concerned about stale stuff piling up and, okay, every so often we'll go and do some garbage collection. My main concern personally is, like, what about the upstream issues that are created by non-maintainers? Are we responding to those in a timely manner? Like, that would be my primary concern. But maybe that's sort of beside the point and separate from what Jordan was trying to get at anyway.
No, I mean, it's congruent, right? This meeting's agenda used to include spending some time in each of the repos, trying to ensure that we were triaging those kinds of issues specifically to try to make sure that we were listening to those viewpoints. And we're kind of not doing that. And this was a call to attention, right? If we get volunteers who go and service this, I don't think we need to do anything more. If they continue to pile up, then we may have to have additional discussions on how we as a community want to handle this and set expectations.
Yeah, it might be interesting to, and maybe something like this exists, but it might be interesting to have like something that keeps track of, how long after the original issue was opened did the first comment from a maintainer show up? Or, until it was closed. And then if there's like some way to make us more aware of like the running average or whatever. I know that sounds like more work, but that would at least be something that in the background could highlight the issue to us in a way that um, we could respond to if it ever seemed problematic. Another thing that I've personally done is I've got, like, in Slack, I've got some automation with the GitHub plugins that essentially like tell me when new issues and stuff get created. But that's become a bit of a fire hose, so it's hard to keep track of that. But maybe there's something there, like maybe there's a way that we can find to um, highlight when issues are created that are not created by us. Because I think those are the ones that are probably most in need of attention, that you wouldn't get that attention any other way usually. I don't know if there's any actions we want to take from that. So maybe Jordan, your call to action here is maybe enough for now. And then maybe I'll try to figure out a way to make sure this shows up on an agenda in like another month, and we can revisit the question to see if we think we've actually improved it all.
Yeah, that sounds good. Mostly it just looked like this needed attention and I was trying to find a way to get it attention. So feels like we've met those goals.
Sweet. All right, thanks, Jordan. Okay, so let me pull up our roadmap check-in because I think there's actually a decent amount to talk about, which is awesome. Okay, so we've got this is our 1.0 epic list. We've got a bunch of stuff in progress now. And some of this is probably sort of done, except it's waiting on documentation. So like this one I know is done. This one is, well, implementation. These two are done. I know Varsha, you're getting very close with the work that you and Todd and Daniel are doing. Taylor, this looks like, did this merge the encryption stuff? If it didn't, I know it was close. Looks like it's still open.
No, yeah, we were, I think Bryce just pinged you, seeing if you wanted to have a final look at it or not, but he's approved it.
All right, cool. Where'd I go? Nikolai, are you here? Yeah, is this one, where are we on this one?
Yeah, I think it's in progress. So I think you needed to write one last test, but there is one thing I need to double check about all namespaces, but I think it's mostly done.
Sweet. What else? So this is mostly done. This is needs one more last review, hopefully. Varsha, I know you and I talked a little bit yesterday about this, but you want to give a quick update of where we are on this one so everybody's aware?
Yeah, I just realized I had mentioned in the upstream OLM channel, we do have a brief for this. Brett, Todd, Daniel, and I have been working on this epic, and the brief is set for acceptance today. So I think I'll wait till the end of the day. If there's anything that folks feel that something is wrong or they want to change or there's something, there any concerns, please let us know. In terms of the implementation, we do have a PR up for review. So please do take a look and let us know if there are any particular changes needed for it.
Awesome. Would you mind dropping that link to the brief in the agenda doc for this meeting too, Varsha?
Yeah.
Let's see, safe CRD upgrades. Bryce, you want to give a quick update on that one?
Yeah, so we have that breakdown tab if you wanted to go to that as well. But there's
Oh yeah.
a lot of work done on that. I think a lot of the checks are in place upstream and CAP. Rashmi is working on adding a more generic like pre-flight field to the cluster extension API and adding an initial security upgrade safety pre-flight check configuration there. So that PR is in progress and we're reviewing some of that. And Ish is working on adding a new required field check up in CAP. So I think that's the last check that we need for pre-flights or for the security upgrade safety pre-flight check. And then I'm working on implementing pre-flight check functionality in Ruckpack right now that once the Helm logic is in operator controller, I'm writing that as a package in Ruckpack that will be able to pull the security upgrade safety pre-flight logic in and replicate some stuff that I did in some of the Ruckpack controllers in the cluster extension controller. So that is kind of moving along smoothly.
Perfect. Let's see. So Alexander, are you here? Yeah, there you are.
Yep, I'm in.
I know. So yesterday we were talking about removal of this stuff. It looked like there was just one more quick change to make. You thinking that'll happen, today?
Yeah, it's already there. So
Perfect.
yeah, I removed the type progressing in the functions as well. And Varsha pointed out that there was a file in the test data that also needed to be removed. So that's removed as well. I think the only thing that I'm missing now is to just change it from a draft PR to an actual PR. And probably you guys need to check that as well, right? To see if I didn't forget anything, but I think it's looking better now.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. If you want to go ahead and switch that over to a real PR,
Okay.
I think it's probably ready. I'll give it one more look, and I'm guessing a few others want to. But when I looked at it yesterday, it looked like that was the only last change to make.
Okay, cool. I'll do
Awesome.
it.
I wonder if we should, like, this in progress column is getting. Michael, are you here from Docs? No.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest maybe we for the ones that need docs, we can create a new column like needs docs or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Because I think we're gonna start filling up this column, and it's less apparent that it's just waiting on Docs. And that'll also help Michael and anybody else who wants to work on Docs, because it'll be more obvious that it's ready for them.
Yeah, maybe we can change in progress to like implementing and then add a needs docs section.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, okay, that sounds good to me. Let's
I can go
see.
ahead and update that.
I don't see Lance. Lance, are you here? I don't see Lance. And Kita, not to put you on the spot, is there anything from this one? I know you've got one PR, and it looked like yesterday we were chatting about sort of the fact that your PR and then Alex's PR are gonna have merge conflicts because you're both touching stuff related to the extension API and also the cluster extension API. Anything here that's concerning on your end in terms of the scope or what we're trying to do or the order that we're doing it?
I think yesterday in the thread we pretty much decided that I just rebase on top of Alex's stuff, right?
Yep. If that seems okay.
Yeah, I think that's okay.
All right. Awesome. Okay, so I think that's basically all of our in progress, and it sounds like a lot of this will, especially once we have this docs column, we can move stuff over and this will clear things out, and it looks like we've got a lot of stuff done, which is fantastic. On the no status side, I know we've started to look at some of these as well. So, Edmund, I noticed you had a PR up and we were chatting about the operator conditions. This one, and I already mentioned this to Edmund, but just for everyone else's sake, I think we probably need more design done here because this one I think has still got some open questions. At least I have open questions. So I think the main open questions that I had were related to, how do we work with OLM0? If OLM0 is installed, then do we need to create an operator conditions CRD? Probably not, since one is already there. But if OLM0 is not installed, then that means we probably have to create the CRD. And then there are questions like, where should we actually implement the logic for the injection of this stuff? So like the PR that Edmund put up went the route of having like a separate controller that handled it, which is definitely one way to do it. Another way to do it would be to like just generate this stuff as part of the registry v1 to plain bundle conversion so that it just shows up in the release. But we have to make sure that if we do that, we don't like overwrite changes that the operator made during an upgrade. That's sort of the whole part of the whole point of this thing is to make sure that operators can communicate status around important life cycle events like upgrades. There might have been a few others, but anyway, so I asked Edmund if he would take a stab at writing up a design doc once he's got his feet under him in terms of like the different moving parts. That way we can do a review and choose a direction before we get too far along in implementation. The other question that I think is an open question is, so there's sort of two parts to this API. One is we need to set up the objects and do the injection to make sure that the operator knows which object they should be updating and has permission to update it. So that's sort of the right side of the API. OLM v0 also obviously sort of supports this read aspect where it'll OLM 0 reads that API and then takes some action based on it. And so I think another open question is like, do we want to keep doing that in OLM 1? Or do we like, is our thinking like, we'll let you write to it, but we're just going to ignore it in V1 because that's not a V1 thing. So I think we need to figure out what our answer is on that question too. Yeah, so that's that one. Edmund, is there anything else on that one you wanted to mention or bring up?
Nothing at this point.
Yep, sounds good. And then Sid, I know we were talking, I don't see Sid, are you here? I don't see Sid. So we have another, this is, I think, a fairly large epic that we'll probably want multiple maintainers working on and looking at, but Sid picked this up and started looking at it sort of as we were still finishing up some other things. So we've got a meeting scheduled a little bit later today. We should actually try to announce that to the whole upstream group and make sure that's available for people to attend. So I will try to make sure that that is in place. I think it's sometime this afternoon, and we'll record it for those that can't show up. But basically what we want to do here is talk about the implications of adding a service account to the spec of a cluster extension. So the way that operator controller works now is that it just uses a cluster admin service account to do everything it needs to do to manage all the cluster extensions. This epic is essentially removing all of operator controller's permissions and instead having it rely on a service account that's provided by the user creating or updating the cluster extension. So there's implications there on how we implement dynamic watches or whether we implement dynamic watches so that we can reconcile when the underlying objects change. Part of which plays into figuring out how we implement the health of the underlying extension. So I think there's some discussion that we want to have there to sort of set the stage for the areas that might be a little more complex as part of this epic. I did do like a really preliminary implementation and have a few upstream dependency sorts of things fixed up. That'll make this one slightly easier. So hopefully like the actual getting of the service account into the API and having that implemented will be fairly straightforward, but it's dealing with all of the implications of how we do watches or polls. That'll be a little bit more complicated, I think. So yeah, that one I expect we'll want to design, and we'll also want 2 or 3 engineers probably working on this one and doing it together. Let's see. No 2 cluster extensions can manage the same object. So this is really the last of the implementation epics that we have for 1.0.0. I already did some hacking here. I think we probably need to make sure that this is also a reasonable approach to solving this question. Nikolai and I were trying to add a similar validating emission policy for package uniqueness, and some folks from Red Hat's API server team poked holes in that almost immediately, so we backed it out and decided that we won't do that. And part of the thinking is we'll rely on something like this, which basically is the thing that guarantees that only one cluster extension or each object can be only owned by a single cluster extension. So you can't have an object shared by multiple cluster extensions. And so based on the fact that we got an issue that said, like, here's how we can break your sort of expected guarantees, I'm now rethinking like whether this validating emission policy has the same problem. So we might need to double check with the API server folks and ask if this is a reasonable approach and whether there's any pitfalls that we haven't thought of. But the implementation that I sort of prototyped here is essentially like match everything that has this label. That's an update, and let you add the label or delete the label, but otherwise it can't change. Like you can't, if the label exists, it has to stay the same or be deleted entirely. So the question is like whether there are any race conditions with that this doesn't fully guarantee immutable owner name label thing. And then once we finish those three things, then the last things to do, unless something else comes up, are just to do some API reviews and make sure that what we have left is or what we've done actually works from an API perspective, and will continue to be extensible as we move into 1.0 or 1. Y.x. Okay, so that's a somewhat long rundown of where we currently are on our roadmap. Any questions, concerns? People just want me to shut up. Anything we're missing? Okay. Vu, I do see you asked a question in chat. We want to talk about that. I think that's a reasonable question.
I'm sorry, what question?
About the operator conditions and whether we still need it.
No, I just a comment on that pretty much, because I was the one working on it, back then. So I'm just curious the intention behind that, and it still is needed or not, because to be completely honest, it was a useless API in the first place. I wasn't the one originally working on it. I was forced into it. So I'm just voicing my opinion here.
Yeah, no.
But my point is that it was designed to handle certain situation that was because of the OLM v0 with the CSV. And you know that I don't know about v1 nowadays, but v0 we don't allow you to embed any cap deployment, right? Deployment is generated by the CSV. So when you're doing the upgrade, meaning upgrade a pod, OLM create a new deployment. And there's no way for you to, handling the fact that there's a deployment that currently on the cluster, meaning there's a pod running, and you're deploying a new pod, and you're basically doing the whole own CSV, replacing the new one, and then you need to delete the own pod, own deployment, and get the new pod up. And there's a rip period in between the two of them existed at the same time. And that normally happening during upgrade. And it become a problem that two controller managing resources in the same cluster that basically processing them at the same time. And that's where the operator condition coming in to basically create a communication channel to let the own deployment, the own pod telling OLM that, oh, I'm ready done with the whole cleanup thing. You can delete me now and let the new controller take over kind of situation. And that's because of CSV. Assuming V1 doesn't rely on CSV the entire time, you have probably better way dealing with the deployment, like, handling on the rolling upgrade or, any kind of fancy deployment strategy that you may have, that enable the transitioning between the old deployment and new deployment on controller to the new controller better. So you don't need that communication channel anymore. So that's what I commenting on.
Yeah.
And
So
assuming you also have V1 doing upgrade better, I assume, not just, if you don't want to do upgrade, you have to like manually checking some sort on I don't forgot what it was, subscription to do like disable upgrade, whatever. I forgot what it was. I assuming with V1 there's a better transitioning upgrade strategy than that. So that's my point.
yes, so I'll hit a few of those. The main reason that this is in our 1.0 list is because we don't have any visibility into whether a controller actually uses this API. The way that we implemented this in V0 is we had OLM go and create the operator conditions object as part of the install, automatically generate the RBAC for it, and then put the name of the thing in the deployment. So from us, it's like completely opaque whether that's actually used or not. We don't really know until we start reading the conditions and see that it's updated. And so the thinking was, if we don't have that set up, well, let me back up. The main thing that we're trying to do in 1.0.0 is to make OLM v1 work with existing registry v1 bundles with some criteria that restricts it to not all registry v1 bundles. But in theory, like, and it's the ones that are all namespaces mode, no dependencies, no webhooks, essentially the stuff that Nikolai's been working on. So there's going to be some subset of those operators that use operator conditions API. And because of the way that we structured it, we like those operators might just assume those APIs, that API exists, that it is present, that it has that environment variable, that it has permission. Like it might make all of those assumptions. And so if we don't go and create this stuff the same way that OLM v0 does, then those operators might also break. And this wouldn't be a problem if we could tell that they used it in advance, because we'd probably just say like, yeah, sorry, like we don't support those operators, like fail out early. But because we can't tell until the operator is running and crashing, essentially, the decision was like, well, let's go and at least create those objects and put the RBAC in place and do the environment variable injection such that the operators can write to that API.
Okay.
And so that's what I was saying earlier. Like there's still
Okay, so this is more like a continuous support kind of situation, not really a extension of this API. Is that what you're saying?
correct. Yeah.
All right.
We haven't said that we definitely don't need something like this, but we also haven't said that we do. And so this is basically just to make sure that when we deploy registry v1 bundles, that they don't immediately crash if they need to use this API.
Okay, that sounds fair. I personally don't know if any of already actually using it because it's so broken on V1, because actually if anyone even pay attention to this API, there's actually V1 and V2 of this API, by the way, not just V1 beta 1 cap situation. This actually have V1 and V2. V1 was completely broken. That's why there's a V2, and I don't think anyone actually using V2, not even V1, I don't think, but I think that's beside the point. But I see your point that to try to make sure the operator doesn't crash if they attempt to using the ACPI. That's a fair point.
Yep. Okay. Thanks for that context view. That was actually really helpful.
Yep. So make sure you're dealing with them both, V1 and V2.
Do we need
that's
to
all.
worry? Right, it's still one CRD, and there's like some sort of conversion that happens or something.
Conversion? Actually, I need to remember this. Sorry, it's been a long time ago. It's like 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I think we. Oh God. I don't remember any transition. I was the one doing this actually on the V2 side, and I actually don't remember. I swear to God.
That's fine. We can go look.
Yeah, you can go look. I don't think it's because the way the CID, because we upgrading it. So and we mark V1 as disabled on the CID, so you cannot create any more a CR on the V1 anymore, and it's
Okay.
only V2. So the operator need to using V2 anyway. And from the conversion perspective, I think we did. I hope so. I actually don't remember. I'm sorry. So somebody need to look into it and ensure that you just need to care about V2. You basically can just get rid of V1 altogether. No one using it, so that's the only thing that matter. But I'm pretty sure the OM v0 controller, which is on the OM operator side, does use V2 only. It does not care about V1.
All right, sweet.
And just one more note now that you're typing it out. Be mindful of the permission on the cluster row or cluster row binding. I forgot what it was. Because between V1 and V2, we're changing the permission there. Because I think originally we allow operator or OM actually changing the specs and the status at the same time, and that's not Kubernetes controller convention in the sense that certain things should only touching the spec and certain things only touching the status and not both at the same time. And we changed that I did. So make sure you follow the V2 convention, which is the convention that come with the V2 fix, meaning that I think the operator should only touching the spec and OM should only touching the status, I think, or vice versa. I don't remember. So please look into it and do the same. That's all.
Perfect. Thanks, Vu. All right, I think that's all we had for the agenda. Was there anything else, demos or conversation or discussion that anyone wanted to do in the last 18 minutes?
The only thing I'll note is that I updated the project board for the needs docs and implementing stuff. So feel free, if there's ones that you already know off the top of your head that needs docs, to move them over.
Awesome. I can do that now for these that I know of. Yeah, and if anybody else has stuff that can move now or will move when something merges, definitely try to revisit this page. If you can't do it yourself, just ping in the OLM dev Slack channel and somebody can do it or give you access. And then I will ping Michael to tell him that this column exists so that he can be aware of that too. All right, well, I think that probably does it unless there's anything else. All right, well, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
See everyone.
Thank you. See you.